What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Artist of Data Science Happy Hour. It is Friday, September 10th. Man, can't believe it. September 10th already. Shout out to Antonio for taking over at the wheel last week. He did an excellent job. Just listened to the episode yesterday. I thought he did an amazing job. So, Antonio, thank you so much for taking over, man. Really appreciate that. Also, shout out to Angela Baltez. I don't know if you listen or not, but word on the street is that you just had a baby. Congratulations. Super excited for you, super happy for you. Hopefully you guys got a chance to tune into the episode that was released today with Max Frenzel. He's a physicist. He has PhD studying like quantum information, something or other, some amazing stuff. Turned AI researcher. So we had an opportunity to chat about a wide number of things. He's also a he does like AI research in this like generative music type of space. It's really interesting, but he's also an author. He wrote a book called the book is called Time Off, and it's all about cultivating your rest ethic and the importance of having rest built into your daily life. So I think it is a damn good episode. We recorded this back in February, and in February I was extremely heavily burnt out. So you can hear a very stressed out Harpreet in that episode if you want to see what that sounds like. Speaking of Antonio, there he is. Antonio, you just missed the huge shout out I did to you for taking over last week. Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. Appreciate
Thank you.
all the help and then having you, just crush it, man. My favorite happy hour episodes seem to be the ones where I'm not at the wheel. So I might have to make this happen. I might have to make this happen again. But again, man, thank you so much. Appreciate that. What else? What other news do I have? Oh yeah, I just completed my first week at Comet this week. That was pretty awesome. Shout out to Austin. Austin's in the building. Man, speaking of like, okay, so I
How
started
does it feel to be at a new job?
Oh, it's great, man. Like, I mean, this is it's exactly what I want to be doing. I think it aligns well with what I'm all about and where I'm trying to take my career. And just a lot of things just kind of come together in this role. So happy to step into something that makes me extremely satisfied. A bunch of my mentees actually got jobs in the last week or two. There's like 6 of them that got jobs. So shout out to all you guys who are leveling up. I just started a job. I'm wondering, do you guys have any advice for somebody on how they can ensure that they crush it in the first 30 days? I'd love to hear some advice. I guess we can start with let's start with Tom. Let's go to Antonio after that.
One word answer, Python. Always up your Python skills.
Yes, Python skills. Was that a laugh track that you just played, or was that an actual just people laughing in the background?
That's just people laughing in the background. That's why I'm muting a lot.
Yes, Python, up your Python skill, especially if you're a data scientist. 100% agree. Antonio, what about you?
I'm starting a new job as well. That's my last day of Verizon. So I'm probably going to need some advice too. Thank you. But I don't know. I think what my last director when I started Verizon, I asked him, how can I be successful the first 30 days? He's like, I don't expect you to be doing anything the first 6 months, man, let alone the first 30 days. By the time you get set up and everything, it takes time. But yeah, I'm going with a mentality, just be confident, be myself. And, like today since it was my last day of Verizon, all of the people are like saying bye and stuff. Nobody's saying like, oh, everybody, like we've worked on fun projects and stuff, but people remember like the jokes, they remember the fun times, how you made them feel as, especially like the data science, data analyst. If I always kind of like people are giving me that feedback, like you always made us feel like our project is in good hands, even though I've messed it up many times. I'm like, hey, yeah, of course we can do this, so it's been that kind of stuff. So I'm excited to be starting a new journey as well alongside with you.
I like that, man. Maintain like a good positive attitude, have a good time, make sure your coworkers
Yes,
have a good time. I guess let's go to Austin for some advice that it's weird because I report to Austin, so let's see what advice he has. Non-specific advice.
Yeah. No, you need to get in the code. No, I'm just kidding. For me, I think the most valuable thing, it's like, I think just taking an interest, being curious, asking questions, like sort of being present in that way, it is a really important thing, because I think one of the things that either hiring managers or your team is like, they're in the sort of work every day, and they start to take things for granted that they assume that like everyone knows. And when you're brand new, a lot of those things definitely, you can't take those for granted. So I think it's really like a huge thing is just being curious, asking good questions, you know, finding the right people to talk to, and then just soaking what you can in from them. And that should be enough. Like if anyone's really asking you to do like a whole lot more than that, then I think they have unrealistic expectations. But I really think like the questions and the curiosity is what really helped me get oriented at Comet and sort of realize what we were doing and where we were headed. And that sort of helps, I think, in the medium to long term, as opposed to trying to like overdo it in the short term. I think that's sort of the key for the first couple of weeks or so, at least, even if not more.
Great tips. Thank you very much, Austin. Also, shout out to a couple of people I ain't seen in a very, very long time. Wiko, what's going on, man? Good to see you again. Carlos in the house. Carlos must have heard all the NFT talk we've been having over the last month. Where were you during that time, man? We really would have liked to have you there. So let's hear from you, Carlos. Any tips? Let's go to Carlos now for Carlos Serge, because Serge got a good comment here in the chat. But any tips on for people who are starting a new job on how to just crush it in the first 30 days?
Yeah, I did miss the NFT talk. That's exactly why I'm here. But actually, I'm leaving my job October 1st, funny enough. So I'm going to be doing entrepreneurship stuff.
Oh, damn. Congratulations,
I
man.
have the same advice. I need that advice. What should I do to really impress clients the first time I meet them? But I think to answer the question, just do all little things. So like when I first started in consulting, I noticed like I would go to a lot of meetings that no one took notes at, and they were highly technical meetings. And I was like, oh, if no one's going to take notes, I guess I will take like insanely good notes and email them out. And I'll just run all of the PowerPoints and run all the note taking, do all of the boring admin stuff. Because when you do that, you'll start being the person who knows most about what you're supposed to be doing. And everyone's going to go to you and just be like, hey, like, how can I best contribute? Because I kind of forgot, I wasn't paying attention, whatever, new things happen. And just being the person who does the little extra things, people will call you up really quickly to do the important things. So I would get pulled into proposals like way sooner than other people at my level, getting tasked like way more stuff, way more high value stuff. So do a little things memorable.
Thank you very much, Carlos. After Carlos, let's go to Serge, and then Monica just sharing advice, general advice on how to just crush it in the first 30 days. Then after that, I'm just going to go to Russell for a question on NFTs or crypto, because you've been having a bunch of those questions. And I think Carlos is here. We don't get him very often. So Serge, go for it.
Well, I think it's good to start with fire. Yeah, because I think the notion is that you should start take it easy, kind of soak it in, like get to know everybody, and it takes a while to get you truly onboarded. But I think it's important to figure out what are the biggest challenges in the organization as soon as possible, and then think of all the crazy ways to fix them. And a lot of people along the way will tell you things like, no, nobody's figured this one out, or it's not a big deal. We're going around it, figuring out other ways around it. And that outside of the box thinking, over time, you have less and less of it, because you just become kind of, it becomes like part of the organizational culture and structure that you kind of deal with it in the way the organization deals with it. But early on, you have all these ideas, and I'm saying it's best to kind of get on with it as soon as possible and challenge the system before you become part of it a little bit. I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, like every organization I've been in the first few months, I remember that of all this. But why? But why do you do it this way? And it's important to speak out, because they start to see the reasons why they hired you to begin with. And also you might hit some home runs early on that are not only memorable to others, but they also kind of set like a foundation for what you're going to do moving forward.
Absolutely amazing advice. Thank you so much, Serge. Let's go to Monica. Then after Monica, we'll go to Russell for some crazy NFT question. I know you'll have a good one. By the way, if anybody has questions, whether you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube or on LinkedIn Live, I see you guys. Just go ahead and drop your comment right there in the chat or your question right there in the chat. Make sure I'll get to you.
Hey, I just got to acknowledge before Monica speaks that her new do is freaking awesome.
Thank you so much.
Wait, did you actually cut your hair out? It looked like it was tied back.
I did.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I
Very
cut
nice.
it and dyed it back to red. So
Nice.
I did the whole color spectrum, and now I'm back to red. So thank you. These are great. These are great tips. Also, it seems like everybody has new jobs lately. I also have a new job, not even 2 months in. So the asking the questions, the but why questions are the best. And I'm already starting to kind of like be absorbed in it, and like everything's now more normal. So the but why questions are kind of fading away. So get those out as fast as you can, especially if you're in a high paced environment. You're going to be absorbed super quickly. Another thing that I've found helpful is not only reach out to your team members and have like coffee chats, get to know them as well, but reach outside of your direct department or your direct organization that you're working with to get a perspective of like your company as a whole, or like an outside perspective of your department and how you can help others within the company. And that's somewhere where you can really help the company as a whole.
Thank you very much, Monica. Appreciate that. Great tips. Yeah, I mean, like this is the first time I worked at a company that's, kind of small. There's like, I think 40 something people at Comet. When I was at Bold, that was like 300 people, 330 people. So that was like the smallest up until then. So now it's cool to be in a smaller organization. I think it gives more of an opportunity to create these kind of relationships that you're talking about. Eric Sims had to bounce, but he left some great tips in the chat. I'm just going to read them. Eric said he started a new job about 100 days ago, and his boss told him that in the first 30 days, he should focus on 3 things. 1, establish strong relationships with my key stakeholders and figure out who they actually are. 2, figure out how to actually find the data. And 3, learn what levers can be used to move the KPIs. Great tips. So Greg, good to see you again. So Greg and Russell, you guys always have some amazing NFT questions, and you're lucky because Carlos is here. So we'll let Carlos take those questions on. But Carlos is here unmuted as well. Do you have any questions or comments, or are you just waiting for the question from Russell?
That's the flow.
All right, go for Russell.
Thank you. Evening, everybody. Just before I get on to the NFT stuff, one quick comment about starting a new job. It may be a no-brainer, but I think it's important to not be an ass in a new job, especially if you're triggered easily by things, if things are done in a different way. Just kind of let it flow, come back and pick it up later on, soak up everything like a sponge and try and, if you receive negativity, transfer it into positivity and put it back out there. I think that's a great way to start a new job.
Great tip. Yeah, absolutely.
So the NFT and the crypto stuff, we've had a lot of conversations recently about NFTs, but if I can put to Carlos firstly about crypto, I posted something earlier today about MasterCard buying or acquiring a crypto company called CipherTrace, and put it out there that this is one of the first big financial organizations I'm aware of that have invested in the crypto market, really. And then went on to extrapolate from that, what is the likelihood that crypto can become a more dominant currency, a competing currency with orthodox currencies? And then further asked, would people be happy to be paid in crypto? So I mixed a whole lot of stuff in a single post. It was perhaps a little confusing, but really interested on Carlos's take. He's already put some great comments back on the post in the first instance, but if he's able to elaborate on that now, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so Twitter owns Square, which I think they also own Cash App. I think the fintech companies have gotten really into, making crypto available within their moat, which is important to say. I think banks are a natural extension of that. They want to moat as much of that activity as possible. And to that extent, Visa, which I think, I think they're, Visa, MasterCard, they're all related to these other fintech companies like Zelle, Venmo, which is owned by PayPal. I mean, they're all connected, right? So I think it's weird to say like MasterCard or Visa's first versus like JP Morgan being first, because it's really all like so interconnected. But to your point, Visa was in the news for buying CryptoPunk, which is one of the, it's not the original or first, but it's one of the big original NFTs. They spent about $150,000 on it. Other companies doing this, Budweiser just bought beer.eth, which is like a Ethereum name service address. They paid a bunch of money for that. So I think we're seeing like just a more broader comment of like big companies are getting in the space. So one thing to bring up too is like, why are these companies making these acquisitions? It's because they have regulatory reasons that they're not allowed to invest directly in crypto. So what do? If they want Bitcoin exposure and they can't buy Bitcoin ETFs, they can buy MicroStrategy, they can buy Tesla. So they can diversify their treasury kind of in a derivative way into this space. So I would say like, I think a lot of institutions are deep in this space in like these roundabout ways. And it makes people not really aware that like, this is not a hypothetical anymore. Like it's just happening before our eyes. We're gonna see more NFT marketing. We're gonna see more companies go around ICO and IPO laws by doing initial NFT offerings. So yeah, I mean, I think the adoption's here. I don't think it's appropriate to like have a conversation around like, is it going to come? It's here, man. It's like, it's not Netscape anymore. We're deep in Google territory, timeline wise. But then to your other point about like cryptocurrencies competing, there's like a very deep economics answer that I won't give you, but I can point you to a paper that goes into it. The shorter answer is, I think it's an inevitability that the globalization of certain assets will change how government functions. Like countries that have proven incapable of maintaining stable inflation, their citizens are just going to opt out. They're going to buy USDC on Ethereum in a completely decentralized way, unpermissioned way. If they can't buy that, they'll buy other stable coins. Like stable coins is the revolution first. So in terms of like competing, no, Ether and Bitcoin will never beat US dollars. That's actually like, that would be kind of bad for them because they're not growing very much. People who want like a stable way of living with a stable currency will just use assets of other countries and opt out of their governments in some way. That's going to be hugely destabilizing for governments that don't know how to run budgets. But in a lot of ways, it's going to be like voting with your dollars, like literally. I mean, the number one country right now for cryptocurrency adoption is probably Vietnam. People don't really think of that, but Vietnam, after Vietnam War, there's huge concerns about their currency stability. So anyway, I'm giving you the longer answer than I wanted, but I mean, people are going to opt out of their currencies for the best government cryptocurrencies in the most literal sense, like central bank created currencies, CBDCs.
A good economics lesson right there. Thank you, Carlos. Any follow-up question to that, Russell, or anybody else have questions on NFTs or crypto at all? Definitely.
Yeah. So the follow-up question is building upon the questions we've had in the last 2 or 3 sessions here, talking about how NFTs are becoming more widespread. Firstly, for the more superficial element, which seems to be basically buying collectibles. Some of these high-value art items or these iterative pictures like Bored Ape and other things like this. Yeah. But we went on then to suggest, and I think it was Mark Freeman's suggestion in the first instance. I don't think he's with us today, but he suggested some 2 or 3 months back now that could NFTs be used to validate the authenticity of a set of data or even a training model that could then be used in other ML systems later, and how we could use this. And I think Antonio then came up with another great option last week, saying basically it could be like a loyalty scheme, like a Diners Club card or a grocery card that you wouldn't have a physical card, but you'd be given NFTs that you could buy with that would then predispose you or make available to you preferential rates, etc. So we were just kind of spitballing all of the alternative options for NFT. So I would be really interested to hear your take on that also, Carlos.
I guess I would push back on some of like, you can NFT anything that you want to be scarce and digital and like perfectly documented and also non-fungible. Like you could do all that stuff, but really like if you wanted to timestamp data sets, I don't think you need NFTs to do that. There's like more complex, like directed acyclic graphs and like data ontology things that you can do. There's of course like hashing, so you can just have like a data set that's stamped with a hash of all of its data, which would be insanely large, or extremely long process to do. But that would be like, that's how you perfectly timestamp some data. But I think the question is more so like what's possible with NFTs. NFTs will be like your identity on the internet. That to me, they're probably most immediate new use. So for example, like why would someone pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a Bored Ape Yacht Club? They might do that because it gets them access to the Discord server. And if people who spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a Bored Ape know this is an exclusive social club, and all they have to do is have that in their wallet, which then allows their wallet address to effectively serve as a login to like a server or login to a website, then they're paying to a private digital club, which gives them access to celebrities, basketball players, people who are well connected. So yeah, I mean, NFTs are definitely going to be a means of like, not just collectibles, but like there'll be a pass to clubs that you can resell. And that resellability is massive because now you can join a lot more clubs if it might let you can sell it for profit. Like I would join way more clubs if I thought I'd be able to like make a profit playing it. Play to earn is the whole model in the NFT gaming world. But yeah, I mean, you can do that right now. Like there's an MMORPG called Treeverse. I bought way too much money of land in this digital game. It's fixed land. I'm one of the only people with a house. There's only 10,000 houses in the whole game. And I can flex my NFTs in this little world. And I know that whenever I'm bored of this game, I'll just sell and I'm definitely gonna make profit. So that's like a whole play to earn model there too, with social clubs. We're like financializing every human interaction essentially, including ones on the internet. I feel like I'm talking. You gotta cut me off, bro.
Yeah, no, that's good. I love it. I mean, it's like you think about far off into the distant future once humans are able to, let's say humans are able to upload their consciousness, whatever, into some virtual realm. Like these NFTs are going to be like the actual currency that you use in this type of environment. Just thinking crazy thoughts way off in the distant future.
Your social security number is probably safer as an NFT than it is as just a number that someone who knows can just call your bank and be you. Like,
let's go to Greg, because I think Greg has a follow-up question here. Go for it.
Yeah. So thanks for this rundown, Carlos. Those are the things that I continue to listen to and over and over until I finally get it. One thing that's quite fairly easy for me to understand is how NFT can benefit folks like basketball players or celebrities, for example, right? Where I can see a world, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can see a world where they own NFTs that they can pass on to their children in terms of inside of their wills, or while they're alive, they can benefit from these digital assets to sell to the public and have an added, stream of revenue, right, using these NFTs. So when you think about the gig economy, the regular folks out there, we know, notoriety, or they're not known in the public, but they just want to find a way to earn a living. What can they do to profit from NFT? How do they find out what to engage in to earn a living using these NFTs? Do they need to be technical? What is the minimum?
I got an example for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point. So I'm gonna try to be brief. Being able to financialize anything is the fundamental thing to get. So like I can financialize my social network because people who know me, I have a quantifiable amount of clout, I guess. and I can make NFTs and people might buy them from me. And if I'm very famous, a lot of people will buy them from me. So okay, what do NFTs do for like people who don't have that? I would argue everybody has some amount of social network and can be financialized in some way, whether it be through no loss lotteries and like collective investment. Like there's lots of ways that people with very, very small social networks can turn those networks into value. But to get directly to your gig economy question, we're financializing everything. That's the main thing to bring up. So that means like small artists can, turn their true fans into money. But let's pretend or skip art and skip saying that people have a specific talent. How can people with like no particular talent or social network like use NFTs? There's a game called Axie Infinity, and it is like the #1 downloaded game in the Philippines because you can be moderately bad at it. All you do is have to make accounts and like play the game as you're instructed to play. Your little Pokemon ripoff monsters will get better, and then you can buy and sell your team. And people in the Philippines were earning $100 a week doing this game. And Axie Infinity's revenue like skyrocketed. It was making like hundreds of millions a year, and like the amount of money moved, just like the volume of exchange. People, I mean, like that's life-changing money in countries like, I don't know what the average median income is in the Philippines, but in Mexico, for example, the daily minimum wage is $7 per day. So if like the poorest people making $7 a day and you can make hundreds a week off playing a video game on your phone, you're gonna do that. And that's something that makes NFT possible. It allows you to financialize anything, including like time. So like a unit of time playing this game has a price, and that means lots of games that you used to pay to play the games, now you can earn out of those games because people are happy to pay for that exchange of time. Like, hey, you grind my RuneScape character for an hour, and that like saves me an hour. I'd pay like $5 for that because I want to hurry up and level up. So to answer your question, I keep doing this, Harper. You gotta slow me down.
Good ones. Greg, do you also have another question?
No, I think it's quite interesting. So because the way I look at it is it's kind of like somebody who wants to go into commerce. You have a set of products you're good at manufacturing with your hands, and you want to find a market to sell it and kind of like automate the contracts that you have between yourself, your products, and the people consuming it. So I see NFT as definitely a great vehicle for that. So and for that reason, I'm continuously interested into this. And time is definitely something that I need to monitor, to invest myself a little bit more into it. So I appreciate your answer there. And I also owe you a follow-up, Carlos. So I'll reach out to you offline to discuss more about that. And I know you're working on
marketplace. Oh, don't worry, I won't sell that here, Harper. No worries. But just to add something to your point about NFTs, Greg, really quick. I was actually talking to one of our, so I do public health consulting, and I was talking to someone on our account team, which is someone who like interfaces with our customers directly, about like blockchain stuff. And they're asking like, what's the future state that like our clients are like not really thinking about? And I was like, well, I think in the future, we'll be able to like have health insurance companies that have deals with hospitals for like specific units of care. So like, for example, it's sad to think, but like, a stroke has this kind of aftercare for this many days, and there's like averages for the stuff that they're modeling. They could NFT those units of care at a certain amount per year based on what the hospital knows it can do. Like it can handle this many stroke victims, this many of these per day. They would like mint units of care. And then in the marketplace, they would sell those units of care. And then insurance companies would effectively collect units of care based on their own analysis of their own like people who have that insurance. So if I have Kaiser Permanente, they have my data, they'll study me, and they'll try to essentially personalize and predict my care at the unit of care level. In which case, if they're wrong or whatever, they can sell those units of care secondary markets, and hospitals can have a % of revenue from secondary markets. And anyway, that's the future state that I think is probably less than 10 years away. It might be less than 5 years away.
Carlos, drop a link to Marketplace, a CDP protocol.
You printed it out. I appreciate that, bro.
Of course, man. That's how I read everything. Sign me up, man. I told you. I'm ready to invest, man. I got faith in you. Sign me up, man. 20 racks.
Me too.
For real. For real. I got a question for Greg, though, man. By the way, if anybody has questions, whether you're on LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube, like I said, I'm watching. Please do drop your questions. I would love to have them. Greg, man, what the heck is quantum ML? Break this down for us at a high level, man. I'm really interested. I know you talked about quantum ML. I believe it was in the podcast with my good friend John Crone, Super Data Science podcast. But what is this stuff? Give us a lowdown on this.
So, this is going to be my non-technical attempt at explaining what quantum ML is. It's really speaks for itself, right? So it's bringing the mechanics of quantum physics to machine learning. So everything that you can think of that a classical computer does with a bit, you bring that, you convert it into a qubit to increase or beef up your processing capability. So when you think about the different setups in the classical world that you could do in in machine learning, whether it's support vector, linear regression, and things like that, you can take a qubit and transform your variable inputs from a linear so when you think about a classical system and you think about a linear regression and you take your inputs and you transform that into an output, so your inputs in a classical computer becomes qubits in a quantum realm where you can design gates that tells you how to make that computation to arrive at your output in a faster way. So the problem with quantum machine learning is that there's not really a clear advantage to what it can do, simply because just because you make a model faster doesn't mean it's great, right? So they're still studying what they can do to claim an advantage for quantum machine learning. And right now, what they're doing is leveraging the speed of quantum machine learning with the accuracy of classical machine learning to arrive at greater achievements. So I'll give you a quick example. Now you have some new-term devices that are taking, for example, a quantum system that can provide you with probability of occurrences, but will not be accurate until the classical computer reviews these probabilities, adjusts the weights, and ingest it back to the quantum system for that quantum system to recalculate probabilities and iterate like this until it arrives at a high confidence level probability. So when you have a classical machine learning or classical system beefed up with a quantum system, you can have this iteration done faster to arrive at your high probability outputs faster than, say, a classical can do it. So think about millions of variables or billions of data that you want to process to arrive at this. And I'd like to finish by thinking about the different use cases that you can think of out there. Think about drug discovery. Think about an airplane manufacturer who would like to simulate the best way to design their wings or something like that ingest tons of data, who would like to evaluate tons of designs to arrive at the best design ever that minimizes faults or defects, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the things that are happening right now on the near-term side. But the long-term side is that the way I see it is that you will only hear about, or you will hear cloud service providers, for example, offering you something like CPU, GPU, QPU for quantum processing unit, and then TPU, right? So for Tensor. So it will only be one of the offerings that customers or consumers can switch back and forth with regards to their business cases that they want to analyze.
All right, couple of questions here. Like, I don't know anything about this, so if they're dumb questions, please forgive me. Can I just go to Best Buy and ask for a quantum computer? Will people look at me like I'm crazy if I do that?
I think people will look at you like you're crazy. So far, the way I understand it, it's very unstable, simply because the way they're designed right now, like nobody knows what is the best design to build a quantum computer, put a quantum computer together where they can eliminate noise completely. Noise, what I mean by noise is when you think about a qubit, think about an electron inside of a closed system. There are noise like vibrations, other things happening in its environment. If it interferes with these electrons, the calculation will be, I'd say, affected, and you have what you call error. And the only thing they can do right now, knowing that they cannot fully eliminate noise, they come up with some algorithms to correct these errors. So it's still an active research where you have multiple ways of designing a quantum computer, whether you want to use photons, where you want to use a trapped ion, you want to use a superconductor. It depends on it. So it's still like there's still some competing companies or researchers who are trying to find what is the best way of designing that. Once you arrive at the best way to design it, then you're going to have to focus on efficiency. How do you compact it into a smaller place, right? So I like to imagine it as one day you will have the same thing that happened to transistors in the classical computer. Hopefully in the far future, the same thing will happen, right? Where you can design it in a small chip that will be stable. And then, the better we get into it, the smaller they will get until you can no longer design it that small, right? There's a size that you reach that is so small that is going to cause instability into the design. You will arrive at that too in the far future for quantum. So long story short, right now what's happening is research into the hardware piece that is still ongoing, but also you have software that can simulate what a good quantum computer can be, right? So right now researchers are hopping on these simulations. So you have AWS Bracket that can offer you some system softwares to kind of simulate what a quantum computer can do, so you can start beefing up your research and things like that. But there isn't a known hardware that is stable out there. I know Google, for example, the other day, they claimed that they have a quantum data center, right? So, to me, it's just a research center that's looking for the best way to design the hardware that will give you stability. Will we ever have a phone that is beefed up with a quantum chip? Maybe, but to me, it's in the far future.
Yeah, all that noise
Just
with
to-
those electrons in different multiple universes and stuff like that, right? Go on, Andrew. Go for it.
Yeah, just to add on to that, you can't get one at Best Buy, but if you've got $1 billion or so and you want to go up to Canada and talk to D-Wave, they might be able to hook you up. And it's interesting because for a project probably about a year ago, I'll put a link in the chat. You can actually go to IBM and sign up and play around with one of their quantum computer simulators. and how you would have to adjust a program to work on a quantum computer. I'll put that in the chat now. But as Greg was mentioning, you know, you have to keep these tremendously cool. It's like almost at actual 0 Kelvin. So the interesting thing about it is that we're trying to exploit that quantum phenomena at that temperature, while at the same time on the silicon processors, as they get smaller, it's the quantum properties at that level which are actually getting in the way of getting even smaller. So there's a little bit of interesting irony there. And that we have, you know, you can stabilize a few qubits, but like not enough to meaningfully do anything, right? And so I think there's, I don't know, there was some study out recently, and to Greg's point, it was like mentioning like you had to get over a certain number of stable qubits that didn't have a certain level of error for us this to actually be useful, right? So it's just really fascinating. But the IBM Quantum Computer, playing around with that and understanding how the qubits work is really, really fun.
I mean,
so the link you sent though is that summary of 12 AI aftermath scenarios from the future of life. So it might be a different link. Greg, go for it. Definitely respond to that. But somebody please tell me, what the hell is a qubit? How's it different from a regular bit? Break that down for me.
Qubit as a regular versus a regular bit. Again, I'll attempt, right? If I were to explain to child Greg what is the purpose of quantum computing, is just to accelerate.
Adult harp.
Or adult harp. What is that purpose? What are we trying to achieve here? Simply said, to me, is we live in a universe of information and possibilities, and we lack the means to compute these possibilities and understand them in a fast way. If you think about time, right? We may have some tools to perform these calculations, but they take forever, right? Who's going to live 10,000 years to wait for the response of a classical computer in a very complex problem, right? So they're trying to shorten that time to kind of evaluate these outputs, right? To shorten that time. Now, qubit versus bit, right? A bit can be somewhat like turning the light on and off, right? On is 1, off is 0. A qubit can be both 1 and 0, and you can influence where you want the value of that qubit to be by manipulating its angles. So a qubit is more of a sphere, where a bit is more of a line like this. If it's pointing up, it's that line, it's on. If it's pointing down, the light is that bit is 0. But the qubit can be both up or down, and you can influence it by tweaking where you want that point, that thing to point. So if you see my finger here, and I'm moving inside of a sphere, so I'm doing things to that ion or that photon or that qubit to influence where I want it to land. So if you're not measuring it, if you're not really looking at it, it could be either 1 or it could be either 0. If you're not looking at it, you do something to it and then you measure it, it may end up here, it may end up here, it may go here. So all of these angles can be measured by exactly like a matrix, right? So you can read it as part 0, part 1, regards to its angles. And then Drew, I'll let you explain that a little bit better than I can, if you will. But the way I understand it is you can manipulate it to make it adopt certain angles to arrive at a certain results. Say, for example, you want to achieve 25% probability X plus 75% probability Y, you tweak it at a certain angle to arrive at somewhere between 0 and 1, right? So therefore, if you think about a system where you have 1 qubit, you have already 0 0, 0, 1 possibilities. If you have 2 qubits, then you increase your possibilities by 2 raised to the n being how many qubits you put together. So your possibilities increase in terms of computation capability.
Okay. But
hopefully I explained that well.
That's like when you're talking about, you see something that it's either 1 or 0. That's like the uncertainty principle with some of that observer effect, right? Like that kind of thing going on. So
because there's a part of this where they're talking about like the collapse of the wave function, where there's there's some fun algorithms that you can experiment with that, and I know some game designers have used that to kind of develop procedurally generated worlds and everything. So, but that's a great description, Greg. It's fantastic. So
the philosopher in me wants to know, is there such thing as quantum logic? Because isn't like information in terms of bits, like you're building logic gates. So I guess are there quantum gates now? And then the quantum logic, does that make sense? And there's a couple of questions coming in from LinkedIn that I'll get to from Costa. But yeah, quantum logic, is that a thing? Should I go, I'd love to learn more about that. Or quantum logic gates.
So quantum logic gates, I don't remember visiting that subject too much, but when I hear gate, to me, a gate is simply an instruction that you give to the qubit to perform. It's kind of like a mathematical function or a rotational instruction that you provide to that qubit to perform, right? So you can say, hey, if you started at that top angle here, once you arrive at the gate, I want you to do a flip, towards the x-axis and rotate your angle by 45 degrees or something like that. That's what a gate does. And those are the mechanisms that the quantum system uses to manipulate the qubit to arrive at a certain result. So really, when I think about it, by explaining it this way, you can think about that this is in fact a logic that you use, because you can design it by different gates until it arrive at the final measurement that where you can check if you arrive at that result. So if you think about a search algorithm, so that's why you have these Grover search, for example, has claimed that they can achieve their search logic faster than the classical way because of the way they design their logical gates to arrive at that point. So it's quite interesting how they prove how faster they can arrive at that expected value when you search into large amount of databases or numbers. And Grover search is one thing that you can take a look at to find out more. But long story short, I do believe that those gates are simply set of instructions that the qubits go through. And if you can think about it, these gates are very linear, where you have the initial state of these qubits, and typically they are parallel to each other, and they move in parallel together, right? And each time you can arrive at a gate right next to each other. So each time they pass a gate, they do something. And they can be linked to each other, these qubits, through a phenomena called entanglement. And I think somebody put it in there if you want to find out what entanglement means. As they go through these gates, they understand what they need to do based on the logic placed inside of these gates until they arrive at a final result. So, and that's why you have different things like quantum key distribution, where you have what you call the same thing that encryption technology use. You have quantum teleportation, where they can have sending a qubit to another entity that is far away from the other person sending that qubit. And you have other business use cases that you can leverage qubits for.
Thank you very much, Greg. Appreciate that. Yeah, that's super fascinating. I looked it up on Google. Quantum logic is a thing. It's an entire Wikipedia page.
And I'm just going to, in the chat, put a
Yeah.
link to another resource on like the building of quantum logic gates. There's actually a really fun app you can play around to see how kind of they work. I'm going to put a link to that also in the chat.
That'd be great. Thank you. There's a question coming in from LinkedIn that's kind of connected to what we're talking about here. From CoStub, one of the big leaps along with GPU computation was its implications on energy use. When we're evolving into quantum computing for QNNs, which I assume means quantum neural networks.
Quantum neural networks.
Yeah. And the power they unlock, do we have some projection on the power implications on quantum processing? It's an interesting question.
So the way I understand it, the power computation for QNN, like the power of computation, like how it will be achieved, or is it better?
Yeah. I guess the power implications on quantum processing, because I guess GPU was they take a lot of energy, right? GPUs take a lot of energy to power. Do we have that same kind of issue with quantum computers?
I guess the question is, we don't know, simply because most of these things are just simulated on classically built computers, right? These classical computers, we've designed quantum systems on them to perform calculations for a QNN. So I don't think we're there yet to understand what would be the energy consumption of these, systems. But my guess is that if I think about the hardware that it takes, like if you can Google right now the computer that Google used to achieve quantum supremacy, I mean, these things are huge, taking like a whole room. And I can tell you that it looks like it consumes a lot of power. So like any technology, when it's designed, it's not designed at its optimal state. So maybe it will consume a lot of power at the beginning. And then this will be one of the key things that will be improved over time when researchers find more stability inside of the design. That's my take. I mean, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it's super interesting to think about, right? Like you mentioned right now, the quantum computer Google used to achieve quantum supremacy took up a whole room.
To claim, yes.
Yeah, right. They claim took up a whole room. Imagine back in the days how big a room it would take to power this thing, and now it fits just right here. It's thin. It's like a quarter of an inch thick, and I think that's an overestimation, right? And in how many years? 30, 40 years, right? So who knows? 30, 40 years in the future, man, what wildness we'll be up to. I think it's super fascinating to think about. Yeah, man. I don't see any other questions coming in through the chat, which is all good. I mean, I like this conversation. We're talking about some fascinating topics, man. That's what the Artist of Data Science is all about, man. We don't.
I like the questions because it kind of tested whether I was paying attention in class or something like that. But
so talk to us about the program you're working on. Like, is this like a graduate program in quantum computing? What's this all about?
Yeah, so I participated in a program sponsored by IBM, and I mentioned AWS Bracket as one of the simulators of quantum systems, but there's also Qiskit, which is the system that I've used, and you can leverage it as an environment to bring in Python notebooks there and code using Python, and they have a quite well documented package for quantum system within Qiskit, and where you can learn how to design systems using Python. So I've studied that or practiced it for a little bit, and it was a 2-semester program. And then the third one was like a crammed one over the summer, which was an introduction to quantum machine learning. I promise I will do a better job at explaining how quantum machine learning works, but it's quite fairly new at its infancy, but there's a lot of promise there. and we've performed some exercises, and you pass the program once you reach certain level inside of your labs or exams that you take and things like that. With that, the key is to continue to read and practice and learn more and things like that. One of the things I'm interested in, if anybody wants to take a look, there's the Python package called Penny Lane. Penny Lane is a quite fascinating company that is offering a package for building quantum machine learning systems. So this one here is probably one that I will try or make an effort to visit to better understand how quantum machine learning can offer an advantage over classical machine learning, or how to build hybrid systems where both work together to optimize, a system.
This is great. Like, I'm looking at the website. It's got you can learn, got tutorials and all that stuff. Definitely gonna look into this. Probably see if there's anybody that I can find on LinkedIn that can reach out to, bring them onto the podcast, because I would love to talk about this a little bit more. So if you wouldn't mind, Greg, like, just let me know some of the textbooks you're using so I can look at the authors and look them up and see if they'd be interested in coming onto the show. I think that'd be super interesting. Just I like to expand my intellectual horizon. I like being interviewer to ask dumb questions, because it's the best feeling to feel dumb in a situation and walk out like, oh my God, I feel like I learned so much more. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't look like there's any more questions, but real quick, I do want to give a shout out to, I've had a lot of help from the community in reviewing this course that I'm launching. Shout out to some of the community members who have been reviewing it, and the leaders in the industry, such as Tom, Greg, Vin, Mark, who have been reviewing the course that I'm creating. Putting a lot of work into this, and I'm hoping it's going to provide benefit to people. The reception so far has been positive. So hopefully, hopefully I could deliver something of value for you guys. Actually, there's another question coming in. I was about to shut it down, but Kostab is asking a question. Does the nature of the computations inform a completely different way to approach data in general? Or is it the same data, but different processing style? We're still figuring out what ML ops looks like. I'm wondering what that looks like with quantum involved. That's a deep question, man. Very interesting. What do you think? What do you guys think?
Could you read that again?
Yeah. I'll also post it right here into the chat. Does the nature of computations inform a completely different way to approach data in general? Or is it the same data but different processing style? So like quantum data, right? We're still trying to figure out what MLOps looks like. I'm wondering what that looks like with quantum involved. It's a heavy question.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it seems like some of the discussions I've been hearing in this world are about really like translating some of our traditional data types and traditional programs into something that can then run on a quantum computer. So it's interesting to think about it. The data is not quantum native in a way. And so what might that look like, and when we might get there, and if we ever will, because it might not make sense. I hear a lot about like potential futures of hybrid, like large quantum computers elsewhere, potentially available via the cloud, but like you're still mobile and whatnot because of the tremendous costs and space. Maybe not now, maybe in 100, 200 years, but in 50 years, it still makes sense to keep like traditional silicon processors on those sorts of things and just, tie into the quantum network when you need that computing power. But that's a really interesting question. Like, when could we get to quantum native data?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's also, when I was following the quantum machine learning program, one of the limitations or difficulties was to take classical data or what I call classical data is kind of like a structured data with columns and rows, and transform each of these columns into a qubit. That transformation is quite difficult, and you need practice to, and according to my learnings too, is that the more you add columns, it scales with the number of qubits as well. So designing a system with a large number of qubits may be a little bit paralyzing, or not the best to manage. So there's one thing that's one thing to observe a little bit more in terms of how to make it a little bit easier. So if you think about the design of a system that is physical, like a physical unit, and it contains a certain amount of qubits in there, you may have limitations when it comes to processing a large amount of data that may require an excessive amount of qubit to perform the computation that you need. So you're going to be limited there. Where you can have a little bit more flexibility is if you can run that classical data into a system that can convert this classical data into quantum features that can scale automatically based on the software or things like that. But on the physical side, I think we're going to be very limited.
Follow-up question from Kostab here. Context to the previous question. For example, testing and machine learning model monitoring needs versioned data state and a versioned model state. Is there another layer involved? Now we're talking about NFTing data sets and NFTing models. So to me, that's like quantum and NFTs combined there. But I'm just being facetious. But yeah, it's a good question. What do you guys think? It's okay to pass on it because these are deep questions. But these are questions.
Just reading a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. These are questions that when I get somebody on the show that's an expert in quantum machine learning, like I'm going to ask these questions because they're very good. Thank you, Kostab. Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know.
Andrew's like, yeah, nope, don't know either. Great
Comments
questions.
on NFTs are done for the day.
Yeah, man. So this is just a testament to just, the future is crazy. Things are going to happen that we cannot even anticipate. 20 years ago, if people would have been talking about all of us sitting together in rooms during a pandemic talking about stuff, nobody would have believed us. And we're talking about quantum computing, NFTs, and things like that. Future's wild, man. Stay curious, stay open-minded.
I'm a little curious, man.
Yeah.
Another layer involved is the person talking about another layer in the quantum realm, right? I'm assuming, is there another layer involved? Can the person elaborate a little bit on that? Is there another layer involved?
Sounds to me like the leaning of the question is, in essence, quantum ML ops related type of thing, right? Like, do we need to, because if we have traditional computers, right, we don't the bits aren't probabilistic, they just compute, right? So if a quantum computer was to fit a model, the bits are in a probabilistic state. Do we need to version control how those bits behaved when we train a model and fit a model, right? Does that I'm thinking that is where this person is going to, because that's kind of what's bouncing around in my mind. But not entirely sure. Does that make sense? Like, do we have to version control qubit state when we are trying to reproduce a quantum machine learning model?
Yeah, I think once you reach a certain level of stability, the version control is probably going to happen in a classical world where you can register the angles that each qubit arrived at to arrive at the probability numbers. But and that's why I think people are designing near-term devices that are combining the power of a quantum computing with a classical computing. Like the example I took before, so you're twisting and turning the qubits into certain angles until they arrive at a measurement that is properly arriving at the expected output. Think about you're searching for that needle in the haystack. So you tweak it and find that probability at 80%, for example, in your first iteration. Then you download these angles of these qubits and pass it to a classical computer, which in turn performs some sort of weight adjustment through back propagation, for example, and then passes those weights back to the quantum device to perform. Now with these weights, you have, okay, now you're instructing this quantum system to change the angles of the gates or the instructions to increase that 80% probability in the output until you reach a certain version that you're satisfied with. And that version can now be, I guess, stored in a classical world and then move forward with that, right? So that's the way I understood it. Not sure if I've inserted the proper way.
That sounds right, because you would use the quantum computing to explore potential states.
Yes.
Right, quickly, which is what you can't do in classical computing, certain issues, right? Like, of course, like the most obvious use of quantum computing is for cryptography, right? So like RSA, if you're factoring primes, right? A quantum computing can do what would take a classical computer 1 million years in, I don't know, like 8 seconds. I'm pulling that out of my ass, but like something short like that. So you explore those possible states, but then once you find it, like once you find the key, you would store that in a classical computer. Same thing with like drug discovery, right? You're exploring all the permutations of the features of the molecular structure. You find the right one, you save it.
Right on. Great questions. Great questions. And CoStep is happy with the responses. And thanks you guys so much for just being honest with the unknown. Mark, man, what's going on? Good to have you here. Also, shout out to people we haven't heard from in a while. Tor, good to see you, Tor. You're probably sitting in some beautiful bar in the south of France. Sturge, Antti, what's going on, my friends? Mark missed Carlos. Yeah, we had Carlos back after, man, I don't know how long. It's a trip, man. Carlos was one of the OG ones, always at office hours from the get-go. And this is office hour number 49, which means in 3 weeks, it'll be 1 year of doing this thing, man. That is insane to me. 1 year straight of data science happy hours. Mark, man, how's it going, man? How's your week been?
Man, it's been going great. Going great. Sorry I was late a little bit. I'm like I said earlier, I don't know for this one or the Sunday one, I'm working on a podcast.
Nice.
And so inspired by you for sure. But we and my friends had like a whole like strategy session of like, what does this podcast mean? And it went over, but it was like super fun and gave me a lot of respect for the work you do.
I'm excited to hear, man. I'm excited to tune in when this thing comes out. Do you want to share any more detail with us, like what it's called, when we can expect to see it?
We're still trying to come up with the name, but essentially the idea is like it's not even data related. It's like an outlet outside of data, but essentially it's like modeling vulnerable conversations and how to share various stories from different backgrounds and having these really great conversations recorded.
So vulnerable conversations, is that a name of a podcast, or is that the actual name of yours? What it's about to be?
It's not even a name. It's like literally we want to have vulnerable conversations.
Got you.
An idea we have was like called Dear Past Self, where like or lessons you'll tell your old self. We don't like the name too much right now, but essentially it's just like trying to think through like what's a brand, what's a story, how we launch, what are our goals. Super fun stuff.
I'm excited to see it. And also, I was giving a shout out to everybody who was checking out my course, doing a review for it. Mark is one of those folks who's so generously putting in his time. Mark, Greg, Tom, Vin's giving me such incredible feedback. I want you guys to know you can keep it completely honest with me. If my course sucks, please let me know what I could do to improve it, because I'm trying to make this thing be the best it could possibly be. Russell is asking, are we going for Hawaiian shirts to celebrate happy hour in 3 weeks in Winnipeg? It's already like low 60s now. So I'm about to be switching to cashmere sweaters in a week or two before I go into full-on sweatshirts. Shout out to Joe Reese and Matt Housley in the house. Very happy to have you guys here. What's going on, man?
Sorry for the tardy.
No, it's all good, man. You missed out on a very interesting conversation on quantum computing. I wonder what
Oh,
quantum
nice.
data-
I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
Oh man, there's some interesting talks, and then also with NFTs and things like that. I'll open it up for other questions. I don't see any questions coming in. Any questions or comments? Anybody want to chime in? Please do so.
Matt, do you have any thoughts on quantum computing?
Yeah, let's hear it, man. You sound very interested about that. Yeah.
I mean, I know that in the late 90s, there were a lot of questions about whether enough coherence would ever be achieved to actually get something useful out of quantum computing. I mean, there's been so much progress since then that it seems plausible that we'll see something useful. Where the practical limits are, I don't know. I mean, will coherence ultimately be a limit where RSA algorithms will continue to work? We just lengthen the factors and we'll be okay, or will that be something that that type of cryptography will be completely broken? I think those remain open questions at this point. But yeah, over 20 years, a lot of things have changed in terms of the general outlook. So
you think that would be the most immediate use case for quantum computing is in the realm of cryptography?
it seems to be the big motivation. I know that a lot of other algorithms have been developed to apply to other areas, but I haven't fully followed that conversation. So.
You know what I think is interesting that I'm interested to see is nowadays when it comes to cryptography, the world of cryptography is kind of losing their mind right now because of quantum computing making advancement, especially with quantum key distributions. And they're thinking, okay, he or her who holds the power to quantum computers can now crack the code, the hash code of crypto. And now I think there are movements in the crypto world where they're trying to design, the hash that is non-breakable by quantum computing. And I asked my question, well, why not leverage quantum computers to design the hash code of crypto? In this case, if a quantum computer designs that hash code, then quantum computer won't be able to break that hash code, right? So it's quite an interesting thing to do. And we're talking about long key chains of numbers, like up in the 200, 500 long. So I'm interested to see what's going to happen there. But for now, people are scared that, if you're China, you have computation power through quantum computing, then any cryptos can be hacked by this very powerful computational power. So I'm curious to see how things will happen.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think there is a lot of impetus from the national security space just because there is this computational arms race. And I think that's driving a lot of the discussion on quantum cryptography outside the commercial space. And then coming back to what Greg just mentioned on using quantum computing to create these keys. And that kind of ties a little bit back into our discussion on how data can be fundamentally different, because at that point, you're not working with RSA where you're trying to factor primes. You can actually, if you're transmitting a key and someone intercepts it, which with a traditional key, you would not know. But because of the nature of the quantum communication of the key, it would be interacted with. And if a quantum key is interacted with in transmission, it disentangles. And therefore you would know when you receive it if it has been tampered with at all. And so there's a lot of very interesting use cases there. And that's fundamentally a very different way that the data operates.
I'd love to get Matt's perspective on this question that we're discussing a little bit earlier, because it's a really interesting question that came in from LinkedIn. Does the nature of computation inform a completely different approach to data in general? Or is it the same data but different processing style? We're still figuring out what ML ops looks like. I'm wondering what that looks like with quantum involved. Some more context is that testing and ML model monitoring needs a versioned data state and a versioned model state. Is there something else, another layer involved once we start talking about quantum computing?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and I'm not an expert in this domain, let's be clear, but the real challenge with quantum computing is that you're so far outside the realm of like procedural thinking, the way we have been thinking about computation for the last, like, since the beginning of computation, at least since the 19th century, really. And so you fundamentally have to rethink what you can do with these algorithms. Quantum computing can be very, very powerful, but you're very, very restricted in terms of the things that you can actually do. So you have to figure out how to like restate your problems in a fundamentally new way. And so I think that's the big challenge. And then the question is, can you then apply these new types of algorithms and these new types of processes to machine learning in a way that's going to be valuable, in a way that solves problems faster, than in a way that fundamentally gets work done a lot faster, like it does with factoring primes, for example. Yeah.
And, for those of you guys interested more in just like the theory of computation, highly recommend checking out stuff from Stephen Wolfram. He's been on Lex Friedman's podcast a couple times, just talk about the theory of computation. Really interesting stuff. I definitely encourage everyone to check it out. You mentioned coherence, and Russell also says that apparently coherence is a big thing in quantum computing. So what coherence, what the heck does that mean, man? Talk to us about that. Anybody? Matt, go for it.
So fundamentally, what you have to do is create these really complex entangled states. And as shows up in other places of where quantum mechanics becomes very important, like superfluid helium, for example, any kind of disturbance of that system, so like thermal disturbance, can mess up that coherence. And as I understand it, this is something that's already taken into account in these algorithms to some extent. So there's a degree to which, and I'm not an expert on this either, but you could sort of resample and do the experiment many times and then get a reasonable answer out of it, as long as the states aren't too disturbed. But fundamentally, like, your bit length is limited by your ability to maintain these coherent states in the system. And that's the key challenge. And so I think like physicists and researchers have pushed this much further than maybe people thought would be possible 20 years ago, but they still have a long, long way to go to like maintaining these entangled states over so many bits. So.
Yeah, and if I can explain that in to little Greg, it's good to understand what entanglement means as well, right? So for me, my interpretation of entanglement is you take two electrons and you have this initial energy state. So you have low energy, high energy. And entanglement, for me, it means if you want, that if electron one has energy level 1, you want the other to be 0, or you want them to be 0 at the same time, you want them to be 1 and 1 at the same time, or you want it to be flipping 1 and 0 or 0 and 1 kind of thing. So they kind of, when one changes, the other one changes, or if you want them to be the same. So entanglement to me is kind of like, if you know the value of one, you know the value of the other automatically, right? Now, coherence means as you go through the changes or gates for these electrons, when you push energy to these electrons, they will move certain ways and they will maintain their stability. Decoherence happens when it interacts with the external forces. When noise traverses these systems, then that pair that you formed with these two electrons is no longer valid. This way, when you perform your computations, or when you perform your gates onto these electrons, then that expected result is no longer achieved. So that's why I would advise you to look into the perfect quantum system is one that meets the DiVincenzo's rules. And one of the rules is coherence, where when you perform a calculation through that system, that the system is stable and noise isn't strong enough to break that entanglement that you formed with the electrons. I call them electrons because it's easier for me to kind of imagine what a qubit is. That's why I'm calling them electrons. They could be ions, they could be other things as well. But DiVincenzo's rules are what researchers are going through right now to understand the criteria that is that it takes to have a stable quantum system.
Awesome. Damn, that's some interesting stuff. Anything to add to that? Matt, Andrew, anybody? Oh, does not.
That was a really nice explanation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Greg. That was awesome. So, and yeah, this looks like a cool resource as well. I haven't read this Technopedia article, but I'll check that out too. So,
yeah, man, physics is awesome. Physics is freaking phenomenal. I wish I was smart enough to study it. I just kind of observe from the sidelines and pretend like I know what's going on. But yeah, awesome conversation. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Appreciate having all you guys here. Don't forget, tune into the conversation I have with Max Frenzel. We touch on quantum and some stuff like that, quantum information theory. It's what he did his PhD in, plus some other physics-related topic. So definitely check that conversation out. We also talk about the importance of resting, and you get to hear a very stressed-out Harp share his woes with Max. We recorded this back in February. It's when I recorded this episode with him. During that time, man, I was going through I had like 8 or 9 interviews in 1 month, and like stressful as hell. Baby wasn't sleeping, so I was like operating on like 4 hours of sleep. It was madness. Still operating on very minimal sleep because the baby's still crazy. But anyways, thank you guys for hanging out. Again, shout out to Antonio for taking care of last week's happy hour. If anybody in the community wants to take the wheels at a happy hour, wants to be host, let me know, man. I'll be happy to take a break every now and then. So if anybody wants to host, let me know. Definitely, want to have you guys have that opportunity. Again, take care. Shout out to everybody who helped review my course. I'm excited to launch it. And my friends, remember, you've got one life on this planet. Why not try to do something big? Cheers, everyone.